Welcome to the Sporticos Football Stories podcast. I'm Craig Resnik-Hanson, and I've just had an awesome chat with Marcus O'Malley. He's a football writer and a huge expert on all things the US men's national team. I'm a fan of his coverage over at Chasing a Cup, which you should definitely check out. And we've gone into the current squad, the World Cup coming to the States, and so much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy our chat with the one and only Marcus O'Malley. Hi, Marcus. Thanks so much for coming on. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Not too bad. It's extremely rainy here, as is predictable, I'm sure, for you, speaking to an Englishman. It's horrible weather right now. How's the weather over there in Kentucky?
We've got similar clouds. It's dumping here. We had a nice weekend, but we've got those wonderful April showers. I don't know if I told you, Craig. I lived in Finchley in North London for 4 years as a kid, so I'm quite used to the weather there.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I bet that's something you don't miss.
No, no, no.
Okay, well, let's get on to some brighter pastures. So we are really happy to have you on to talk to us about the US men's national team, because we don't get many international team fans on. We usually tend to speak to people about their clubs, but we have spoken to a few fans about their countries, and we can't wait to speak to you about yours. But first, before we get into the US men's national team itself, I wanted to ask you, what is the vibe like in terms of how stoked are you for the World Cup to be on US soil in 2026? And what's the sort of feeling among the fans of soccer stateside? How excited is everyone?
Oh, Craig, yes, extremely excited. And what I love, just as a fan of the game itself and the popularity of the game growing, is watching the casuals, get excited. A couple years out, starting to look at the cities, trying to figure out how many games they can get to. All the kids in the community talking about, how am I going to get to a game? What's that going to look like? How many can we get to? You've got the energy from Ted Lasso, welcome to Wrexham. Messi's here. EPL, the Premier League is at an all-time high, easy to access. I think there's just a ton of energy behind the game right now, and 2026 is kind of the pinnacle that I think that energy is headed toward.
So there couldn't be a better time, I guess, to host the World Cup, obviously, along with Mexico and Canada. What do you think what could we expect to see the effect of the World Cup be? Can you see it having long-term effects on the popularity, like you said, with casuals and the growth of the game over there? Do you think that having this World Cup could open the eyes of even more fans in the US?
I do. I mean, if you look back to 94, right? Major League Soccer didn't exist yet. The infrastructure that it's set up, what we're seeing right now with the popularity of the Premier League, MLS at an all-time high with Messi here, even the sub leagues. We've got a USL club here in town, Louisville City, across the bridge in a small town that, you probably count the traffic lights, more than the population. They're getting ready to get a League Two club and stadium set up. So I think the energy, the passion from athletes and celebrities, many of them are investing in soccer, getting excited behind the energy of Wrexham. I think it could not be a bigger opportunity. I think it actually has potential to have a bigger impact than 1994 did, because of the energy that it's walking into here in the States.
Yeah, I saw you share on Twitter that the derby between, is it Louisville and Indiana?
Indianapolis, yeah,
Indianapolis.
correct.
Indiana's the state, right? Or is Indianapolis the
Correct.
state?
You got it.
I always get that mixed up. I saw that there's a derby called El Trafico, right? And it's in the second tier, is it?
Well,
In the
yeah.
USL.
The El Trafico is in the Major League Soccer. Lipa FC is the second tier one. But yeah, we had 362,000 viewers. It
Wow.
was on television in the second tier of soccer. Is outperforming even some of the national team and Major League Soccer, at least on national television. Obviously, they're behind the Apple paywall now, so we don't know the numbers. But getting 362,000 people following a second tier in the U.S. is massive success.
That is huge. That is huge, really. But you mentioned 1994, and the legacy that it's brought, and hoping that we can see something similar in 2026 on your end. But I guess a big part of that, not the be all and end all, it won't be necessary for the game to grow, but something that would really help the game to grow would be a really good outing from the US men's national team. How confident are you of the team performing in the tournament itself on the pitch?
In 2026, is that what you're talking about? Like
Yeah,
how well the group?
exactly. Yeah.
I have a high degree of confidence. You probably empathize. You guys have had challenges of your own. When it comes to coaching, I'm not super keen on Berhalter, but
Yeah.
the talent on the pitch, I think, can overcome that, and we've seen that in that group. I thought the performance against England, in the last World Cup, that was many of those guys' first time due to us not making it in 2018. Getting that confidence to compete against the likes of Wales and England. I wasn't real pleased with their performance against Holland, but we made a game of it anyway. I do think, at the top line, when you look at the Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie that you and I were talking about just before we got on the pod, Chris Richards, we've got several Premier League starters, several at the top of Series A, across Spain, Germany, the top level talent and the entire across the 11 and deep into the bench. We have, top 5 league players playing on home field. And I would say, from what I've seen from this group, they have been able to rise to the occasion in several big games. And so I think Copa America is going to be a great test this summer. But I think, amongst this group, I have high expectations that we can put it together for a run at home, feeding off of the energy here in the States. And I think, yeah, just the opportunity, the fan base, I think these guys know the pressure that's on them. And I'm hopeful that they can rise above. I'm not too keen on the coach. I'm not too keen on the system, but the players themselves, I'm hoping can make a run in a tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. I think in terms of the talent in the squad, there are too many names to list really that are playing at the top level. We didn't even, I think that we didn't get into Brendan Aronson as well, Tyler Adams,
Correct.
Musa, Weah, Balogun. There's a ton of talent there, and I think that you're definitely right to be confident. I guess what I was thinking though as well is that the US men's national team actually has, I think, a good record in World Cups anyway, of I guess you would say overperforming for the market compared to what people might expect, because we're talking about, the very elite of the international game, and they regularly get out of the group stage. I seem to remember them getting to the round of 16 apart when they qualify pretty much every time. So they have a really good ability to do that. I guess what I would ask is, how does this group of players compare to the one sort of 10 years ago or maybe 10 to 15 years ago when we had the likes of Clint Dempsey and Landon Donovan? Is this team even better than that one? Because I think that team was pretty good too.
I love that. Actually, I'll go back to 2009. I'll go 15 years back. I lived in Cape Town actually at the time of the Confederations Cup. And that U.S. team beat Spain in the Confederations Cup leading to 2010. And we had Brazil at 2-0 at halftime, the final of that year. Brazil ended up coming back and scoring 3 in the second half and defeating that team. But that 2009 leading into 2010 team beat that 2010 World Cup winner, Spain, with Tim Howard, Josie Altidore, Michael Bradley. They were really an incredible squad that, carried over, I feel like, into 2014. We were in the group of death. We had Germany, Portugal, Ghana, eked one out with the draw in Portugal, and then getting our revenge game against Ghana and going into the round of 16. And Tim Howard had that phenomenal game against Belgium. De Bruyne was just up and coming, your Manchester City star. So those teams were good. But I would say the top line, the top tier talent stretched themselves more at that time than I would say this group needs to. Christian Pulisic, I think, is scratching at the surface of being, one of the top players in Series A. Weston McKennie, one of the top players there. Balogun, very young but dangerous player in France. And then, when you look across the 11 and the depth coming off of the bench, and even some of the guys that were probably going to leave off of that squad would be starters in top 5 leagues. We're no longer relying on our domestic league, to kind of fill out that roster. I would be surprised if there's any Major League Soccer players on that roster in 2026. I think we have the depth and that's only going to continue to grow as these young players continue to be recruited. We talked about Louisville City earlier. We had two players from Louisville, the second tier of US, going over to Europe, to La Liga in Jonathan Gomez. Joshua Winder this past summer was signed by Benfica, a Champions League team, pulling young Americans out of the second tier league and pulling them up into a squad as strong as Benfica's was this past season. I think the depth is on a completely different level than it's ever been. And so I think they're going to surprise some people. I think there's going to be a really big opportunity to have that exciting kind of overachieving underdog American spirit, but with the talent to back it up this time.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the big difference is the depth, because before there would be maybe four or five really, really good players, and then it was kind of players that the rest of the world wouldn't necessarily be familiar with. Good, solid players, but not sort of big stars. Whereas now you could name a full 11 of players that even a casual European fan would be familiar with. We've talked a lot about the World Cup. Obviously, that's the big one. But a lot of people on our side of the pond might not be familiar with the CONCACAF Nations League, because we have our own UEFA Nations League, which I think is viewed quite mockingly by most fans. Most fans sort of I don't think it's gone down too well. I don't think it's particularly appealing. Most international fans over here are only interested in the World Cup and the Euros. But what's it like on the CONCACAF side of things? I'm sure it's hard for you to say about what the other countries feel about it, but or maybe you can gauge it from Twitter. I don't know. How important is it deemed for the American fan base? Is it treated with seriousness? Was the win that you just picked up, winning the thing, was it a big deal? How did everyone react to that?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I would say we probably look at it somewhat similar to Europe at this point. I don't want to dismiss it. We love beating our rivals, right? The U.S. Mexico rivalry is strong. We love to win. We love to beat our rivals. We did have, our top talent for the most part in that group. I think it's one of those probably similar to your experience where, it's more, there's more to lose than to gain. So, us struggling against Jamaica probably created some more questions than answers. That wasn't even Jamaica's
Yeah.
first squad. And so that probably gives more red flags than any benefit we got out of actually winning the thing. So fans like to beat Mexico. The casuals see us win trophies, might pique their interest into a couple of the big names and who scored goals and that kind of thing. But most of the American fans, like we said, I think the talent has just, vastly surpassed most of CONCACAF, and so we're looking more to the opportunities in Copa America and some of the friendlies and really testing this group against the top tier versus really getting excited about beating a team like Jamaica or even, I feel like Mexico has fallen off dramatically over the last couple of years, just through injuries and kind of the changing of the guard. They just don't quite have that talent that they've had historically.
Yeah, I think you could see, I'm obviously way less familiar with it than you are, but just from watching them in World Cups, it seems like, they had a really aging squad. They were hanging on to players, really deep into their careers, and you're wondering how it's going to go when they freshen things up. And I guess it's not going great. But back to the US side of things, the Nations League, meh, I guess, in the eyes of most. The World Cup, obviously, the biggest deal. And then we have the Copa America, which I guess for you would be the equivalent of the Euros. Not quite as important as the World Cup, but super important. Do you think that, am I right in saying that this is it a new thing for the US, and is Mexico as well involved in it? And usually it's only South American countries, right?
Typically, it's South American. There was a crossover. I'm trying to remember what year that was. A couple years back, we did this as well, where they brought in some of the top North American sides, and that's happening again in this case. So I think the top 5 sides are joining from North America. So yeah, typically it's South America. It's the World Cup B to the Euros. It's the other group that typically wins World Cups coming together, and so typically it's a lot of fun. For the U.S., this is a huge opportunity. We don't get to with CONCACAF play some of those talent. Getting to really see a team like Uruguay, who's in our group, and so I think a lot of people are very excited about the opportunity, hungry to get that marquee win, that 2009 beating Spain in the Confederations Cup, getting that build up to the World Cup to say, hey, we belong, like getting that belief amongst these young guys to beat somebody good in a, more than a friendly, something meaningful to one of those sides.
Really meaningful for them. I know they take it as seriously as we do the Euros for sure. It's a huge deal. If you were to knock out Argentina or Brazil or something, it's a gigantic thing. Do you think that you can go far in Copa America?
I think similar to the World Cup. I don't love the coach. I don't love the system. I think our roster is strong enough to make a run. I don't know that we would belong on the field against Brazil, but I think to your point that you've brought up, we're a scrappy enough team. It is important to a lot of those countries, but it's not quite the World Cup. It would be embarrassing to lose to the U.S. But if we had a scrappy game, maybe Matt Turner has a big moment like Tim Howard has had in the past, and we get a bunch of good saves and make a game of it. I think we have the potential to definitely come out of the group, potentially win it if we can pull something away from Uruguay, which would put us in, maybe against a Colombia or somebody like that I think would be beatable. I wouldn't say we would come in as the stronger hand, but absolutely, I believe the boys could put something together and make a run at something like the semis, and make some noise.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you'd be outmatched at all. I think it's a similar situation to the problem with Oceania. Not quite the same because I think CONCACAF is much, much stronger than the OFC. But I think that the dilemma they had with Australia needing to join the Asian side of things and playing the Asian Cup, because I think it is kind of similar. I think US and is it US, Canada, Mexico, Jamaica, Costa Rica, that kind of level teams that are
Panama,
dropping into
correct.
this.
Yeah.
I think those teams are more than on a level with the top half of CONMEBOL and better than some of the the Bolivias of this world and stuff for sure. I don't think it's that you'd be outmatched at all. I wanted to ask, we have obviously here the Euros, Africa has AFCON, Asia has the Asian Cup, CONMEBOL has Copa America. Is the CONCACAF Gold Cup your guys' equivalent of that?
It's the closest thing, yeah. That and Nations League are the closest things we have to something like that. The rivalry.
You going to be continuing to play in that, or is this a situation now where you're leaving that behind and you're joining Copa America?
No, this is I think a special event. Putting the two together, I think it's to help create excitement for the World Cup because 26 year.
Ah,
I think they've invited us separately. I would love to see that. North and South America. I don't know that the travel and all those those types of things that they would open it up to us indefinitely. But I would love to see that. I'd love to see that. Maybe that tournament expands and includes us in it. I would love to see us get more opportunities to play. I think we can play there. To your point, I think Mexico has come a long way. They're in a down period, but they've had Jimenez and others. Premier League stars. Alfonso Davies, I think, is one of the best players in the world. In Canada, and they've got a couple of players. That have come along at some of those clubs. I think they're in a similar place that the U.S. was a few years back, where they've got a couple of stars and maybe starting to build a program and create excitement. So I think there's value in having the Americans at Copa, selling tickets and revenue that it generates, as well as Mexico and Canada. Economically, I can see it being beneficial to Copa, and hopefully they see that benefit as well, and maybe it could be something long term that we could see happen.
yeah, I think it would be a good idea, and I think they could make it work logistically as well if they put their heads together. I wanted to ask you, from the outside, it's always perceived that football, soccer is very much the bridesmaid in the US. It's very much behind all the top major American sports like NFL and NBA and MLB and so on. With casual fandom sort of at its peak, you mentioned, all the sort of cultural touch points that are happening with Welcome to Wrexham and Ted Lasso and so on. Do you feel that it's possible for some of the big stars of the men's national team to get close to that level that some of those big, sporting icons are on?
I do. If you look at even those top sporting icons, right? LeBron James, part owner of Liverpool. Kevin Durant in the NBA owns the part owner of Philadelphia Union. You've got NFL players that are purchasing, mid-table championship English clubs. Burnley is one that comes to mind. You've got fans of the game. I know Mahomes is a big follower of the national team. Several of them have married U.S. women's soccer players and have taken a keen interest both in the clubs, the local league, domestic league, as well as the international level. Balogun, you mentioned, he was not even a U.S. player, and the Miami Heat, made an announcement about him being in the building and welcomed him, and athletes were trying to sway him to join the American side. So I think it's boiling. I would say it's probably more in line with like the Olympics at this point. Like a Michael Phelps, and it's sort of when the season comes around, World Cup, people get excited about it. But I think Christian Pulisic has the potential, and depending on how we perform in 26, to kind of jump into that upper echelon of national appeal. And then obviously guys like Messi that are bringing the local game, and getting welcome to Wrexham, getting people excited about the sport itself. I think it's definitely surpassing things like hockey and baseball, not quite to the NBA and NFL levels yet. But I think a player like Christian Pulisic has the potential, Weston McKennie, to crack into that group and really make a name for the sport here.
Yeah, I've read that a lot actually, that the big five, there's sort of that hockey could be dropping off and that soccer might be about to sort of jump into that fifth spot. Um, well, speaking of the growth of the sport, what impact has Messi had? Has it been as big as you anticipated? Bigger, smaller?
Oh, unreal. Yeah. Bigger, I would say, than could have been anticipated. I mean, the jersey sales and I would call them even non-casuals, taking an interest. One of my colleagues does not care about soccer, went to go see Miami because Messi was there, and wanted, his kid was begging him to go. And so I think the sport is absolutely number one played amongst the youth. So the next generation, the kids today, are playing it, are passionate about the Premier League. Messi's jersey, number one seller in the U.S., surpasses everything NFL, NBA. He is passing every domestic statistic, and people are in droves going to watch him. So I think the timing, with Ted Lasso and Welcome to Wrexham, even some of the domestic guys like Hercules Gomez, Football America. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's
No, no.
really, yeah, he's got a phenomenal following. There's a lot of independents like Tactical Manager, 11 Yanks, YouTube channels. And so people are really getting behind and finding a passion and an interest. And Messi has been, just huge momentum swing at the perfect time of things like this.
From what I've always heard, it's such a strange situation because, like you said, it's the number one sport played among the youth. So kids always love playing it. And I suppose while they're loving playing it, they're probably also into it. But then when they get older, they sort of transition into, they stop watching it, I guess, and they start watching basketball or American football or something. Could this Messi revolution be the end of that? Are these kids who are playing now, buying the Messi jerseys, are they going to be watching in their 30s and telling their kids to watch with them?
I think it's a generational shift. I think baseball used to be a pretty big thing. I would say hockey, right in the 90s. The Mighty Ducks was a famous movie that came out, and I feel like that
Love that
generation.
movie.
Yeah, it's a great film. But I feel like that generation of kids fell in love with that sport, and I think soccer is taking its moment. And I think this 2026 is just going to skyrocket it into that competitive space with NBA and NFL in a way that's just never done before. And I would say access, right? Like Americans know that MLS is not the peak soccer, but having access to Premier League 20 years ago was you paid, you had to go to a bar to see it. It's difficult to get on television. The access that streaming and the internet has provided, I think has massively given access to that Premier League. And I would say Premier League is extremely competitive here, if not, one of its biggest markets, where it's gaining its revenue is probably here in the US.
Now, as an Englishman, I have to ask you, there have been these iconic players throughout the years who've gone to America, MLS, pre-MLS, when it was, what was it called before the MLS, when you had New York Cosmos and stuff?
The North American Soccer League. Yeah.
That's it, Nazzle. Yeah.
Yeah.
In those days from Pele and now to Messi, there have been these different, icons who've come through and had an impact. I have to ask you about Beckham. I
Yeah.
watched his documentary recently and learned a lot more about the deal that he cut to eventually now own Inter Miami, which he does, and launch his franchise. What would you say has been the impact that he had on American soccer? Is it as big as it seems from over here, or is it actually blown up and he didn't really have much of an impact? What would you say?
No, I'd say a huge impact. And actually, I'd meant to make a note of that earlier and missed it. When he came, I think he was at least as transformative as I feel like Messi is right now because of the timing. What he did, how he brought MLS into light, his celebrity status and his ability to connect with celebrities and fans of the game here. He's massive. I hear people talking about that documentary. My kids have watched one about the impact he had on a local soccer club there in England. Another documentary, I believe it's on Disney.
Oh
He has
yeah,
had,
I haven't seen that one. I can't remember what it's called, but I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, we watched it. My son was into it, and so we got into that, and absolutely. And then of course Bend It like Beckham, and so the celebrity status he had was so unique that he's left a lasting impression for sure. And while Messi is mostly Messi on the field. Beckham, I feel like, was that connector that he had that celebrity persona that I think a lot of fans and a lot of celebrities really liked and are now connecting with and wanting to show up at Miami when Messi was signed. Really excited about what Beckham has done. So I would say he's definitely at least as transformative as any of the other big stars. Certainly more than the Rooneys and Gerrards and some other big stars that have come. I would say Beckham was significantly higher, and of course the LA piece of it. He knows how to put on a show.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the biggest difference and the biggest hurdle for Messi, I guess, is that, like you said, Messi is only Messi on the field. Off the field, obviously he doesn't speak English very well, and he's not particularly charismatic even in Spanish. As a Spanish speaker, I would say that. He is, he's a magician on the field, and sort of that's it. Whereas Beckham had that whole persona on and off the field. So I guess that was a key difference. Although one theory I have heard is that whether or not he's particularly, a charismatic, open guy, Messi, even in his mother tongue, I have heard that a big thing about him going over there is enabling the league and the sport itself to really galvanize that Latin American population in the US, which I imagine it's a huge market. And they're already, I guess, from what I can tell, a lot of the Mexican Americans are following Liga MX, although I don't think you're actually supposed to say it like that, are you? Mekis, I
MX,
think it.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that they follow that. But now there's an attempt, I guess, to try and convert them into MLS fanatics with the help of Messi. Have you noticed any sort of shift like that going on culturally in terms of galvanizing that Latin-speaking American population?
Yeah, and I would say even more than that, right? So you've got the fans. The other very intriguing part of the Messi impact, I would say, is the draw of South Americans coming to Major League Soccer. So their ability for the clubs to recruit from South America has grown tremendously in appeal, right? Like if it's a good enough league for Messi, it's maybe they're a better platform for me to break in and then go to Europe next. Once I kind of make a name for myself in MLS. Like you have a guy like Miguel Almiron who's now at Newcastle. There's a handful of stories like that. I think we're going to see generationally a big shift of South Americans wanting to come and play in Major League Soccer to play with their idol before he retires. And so I think that's going to be fascinating. Yes, I agree. The fans, I would not be surprised if he had an influence on Copa America coming here. Just because of that connection of South America and Major League Soccer and the relationships that he's forged through that. I would absolutely say, yeah, definitely seen an increase in the communities and his impact. I think on Major League Soccer will long be seen after he retires.
So what's next for the US men's national team?
Yeah, so yeah, I think Copa America has got to be a big target on its back. It's we don't have to qualify being the host, and so this is a really one of the last impactful couple of games before the World Cup that we get to have, and so I think we need to make a name for ourselves there. I think guys like Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie need to secure their roles. Tim Weah, Gio Reyna, they need to find a home and really have an impact. And I think getting that starting 11 secured in top five leagues, having an impact are probably two of the biggest things we need to do over the next 2 years.
Well, good luck with the Copa America. Good luck with the World Cup. I can't wait for it. I'm praying that I can try and get out there because my wife has some friends in Canada and also in Georgia. So we're wondering maybe we should target one of those two areas and try and get over there for a couple of weeks and see if we can, take in the atmosphere. But I absolutely can't wait to watch it on TV as well. It's going to be such a spectacle. Thank you so much for joining me, Marcus. It's been so cool to hear from you and get a really different perspective from what we usually hear. Best of luck with the upcoming friendlies and the Copa America group stage, and hopefully you guys can do yourselves proud.
Greg, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on the show. I definitely would recommend checking out Atlanta. That Mercedes-Benz Stadium's phenomenal. I got to watch Newcastle and Chelsea last summer. Beautiful soccer stadium, or a beautiful place to watch soccer at least. And
is it one of the World Cup stadiums too? The Atlanta
yeah,
one.
I believe it is. Yeah,
brilliant. That would be perfect.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I would love to have you come over to the U.S. and take in a match over here. And Craig, thanks for having me on the show. Look forward to continue to watch and listen. And best of luck to you all as well this summer and into 26.
Thank you so much, dude. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening to the Sporticos Football Stories podcast. It was a huge pleasure chatting with Marcus, and we can't wait to bring you more chats with fans from across the footballing landscape, from ex-pros to bloggers, YouTubers, commentators, and much more. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing. If you really liked it, give us a 5-star review wherever you get your pods. That will help our little podcast out so much. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time on the Sporticos Football Stories podcast.